celebrate Resurrection Sunday, I've been challenged as I thought about the woman in Matthew chapter 26 who anointed Jesus' head with oil. This was after his triumphal entry into Jerusalem and just a short time before his crucifixion. It says in verses 6 through 13, while Jesus was in Bethany, in the home of a man known as Simon the leper, a woman came to him with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume, which she poured on his head as he was reclining at the table. When the disciples saw this, they were indignant. Why this waste? They asked. This perfume could have been sold at a high price and the money given to the poor. Aware of this, Jesus said to them, why are you bothering this woman? She's done a beautiful thing to me. The poor you will always have with you, but you will not always have me. When she poured this perfume on my body, she did it to prepare me for burial. I tell you the truth. Wherever this gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her. So there are a few things here that are worth thinking about. The woman who John names in his gospel as Mary, the sister of Lazarus, brought something that was very expensive. Her worship of Jesus had a high cost. There was the cost of the ointment. Verse 7 says it was very expensive. There was also the cost of her interrupting this dinner at Simon's house to do something unexpected. We know it was unexpected because the disciples are taken aback by what they see. There was the cost of misunderstanding and misinterpretation. The disciples were indignant, asking why she wasted such a precious thing that could have been used for a better purpose. Her worship had a high cost, and yet she was willing to pay that cost to anoint Jesus. It didn't matter if the disciples didn't understand what she was doing. It didn't matter if they thought her wasteful. It didn't matter that she was interrupting dinner because Jesus recognizes her act as pure. He has quite a bit to say about it, actually. He says in verse 10, why do you trouble this woman? For she's done a beautiful thing to me. This verse keeps cutting me to the quick. Jesus calls her act beautiful. And I wonder, would he say the same about my heart, about my worship? Do I worship him with abandon, purely and simply focused on him? Do I bring my heart and break it open to pour it on him as a precious anointing? Do I disregard the fact that people may misunderstand or misinterpret my worship? Or do I just purely pour it out to him? I honestly have a hard time talking about this without becoming emotional because I want to say yes to these questions, but oftentimes I know I'm stopping at the entrance rather than crossing the room to Jesus and pouring out my love on him. I'm oftentimes worshiping from afar, which is not at all what we see Mary doing. In verses 11 and 12, Jesus says, the poor you will always have with you, but you will not always have me. When she poured this perfume on my body, she did it to prepare me for burial. Now, Jesus wasn't downplaying our responsibility to the poor, I don't think, and I'm not scholarly enough to tell you whether she fully knew what she was doing or not about preparing his body for burial. But I do know that she was fully present in that moment with Jesus. Jesus was right in front of her, and she gave him everything she had, whether anyone else liked it or understood it. She didn't stop at the door. She crossed the threshold and presented her offering. And then finally, in verse 13, he says, I tell you the truth. Wherever this gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will also be told in her memory. And that has to tell us that this moment was treasured by Jesus. Remember in verse 10, he called it beautiful. Why? Because of her motivation. This was an act of worship that overflowed from a pure and loving heart. It didn't matter whether anyone else was around or not because it was done for Jesus alone. She didn't do it out of obligation or pride or self-righteousness. So as we prepare to celebrate Resurrection Sunday in a few short days, let's take the time to examine our own hearts. Let's present our hearts to Jesus, broken and poured out, and focus simply on him. One last thought I have about this passage is that Mary's hands must have also carried the fragrance of that perfume after she poured it out, so that everywhere she went, she smelled of Jesus. And just as she carried the aroma of that perfume, 2 Corinthians 2:15 says we are the aroma of Christ among those who are being saved and among those who are perishing. Did you catch that? We are the aroma of Christ. Let us take up that charge then, bringing the fragrance of Christ not only to church or to Bible study, but also to our dinner tables, to our neighbors, to those whose very presence, even through a video chat, makes us want to roll our eyes or go into another room. The only way for us to do that, the only way for us to carry his fragrance, is to touch the face of Jesus, to sit at his feet. He is the aroma we are seeking to carry, and the only way to do that is to soak in his presence. So what better way is there to celebrate Resurrection Sunday than by soaking in his presence and worshiping with our hearts poured out in a simple act of love and devotion? And of course, I want to remind you to join us in prayer at 9 p.m. nightly as we ask for God's peace, protection, provision, and intervention. See you soon, church family.